Good morning, everyone. As Richard said, my name is Mourad. I work for the Enterprise Europe Network team within Scottish Enterprise and one of the partners in the Team Scotland approach to Horizon 2020. Within Horizon 2020, our Enterprise Europe Network's activities are really kind of twofold. One, we will be the kind of regional contact point for inquiries for the SME instrument. So anyone in here today who's looking for specific further information or maybe looking to submit an application towards the SME instrument would be myself or my colleague Ken Gordon, who would be the main point of contact, but also the kind of role of Horizon 2020 is obviously a lot of it's to do with consortium building, and that's what the Enterprise Europe Network does. So we're essentially the people who could potentially find you partners. My day job is working with companies in the kind of chemical sciences and advanced materials sectors, but we do have a construction specialist, my colleague Lucy Black, up the back. That's Lucy, lovely blonde lady up the back. And she's the construction lead really for our team. So specific stuff around potential partner research and potential partner finding, Lucy's really the person to speak to. She's extremely well connected within the sector, both here and in Europe. So the SME instrument is an interesting one. It's brand new and there's a rationale behind it, which I'll take you through. But the kind of main idea is to, what it says there, the Commission decided they need to start putting small companies in the driving seat of European projects. And the reason they're talking about innovation is because SMEs, the challenge that many SMEs face, I'm sure SMEs in the room will agree, is taking the innovation and actually commercializing it. So that's what they mean by innovation in this context. It's the ability to take the new ideas and actually translate them into commercial outcomes. So not just innovation for the sake of it, but actually with a commercial end. So the EU and member states decided after the last framework programme was completed to kind of take a step back and take a look at what the barriers were to SMEs. And if you actually think about the significance of SMEs in the wider European economy, they're the generator of 2/3 of jobs. 85% of European jobs in the last 10 years have come from small and medium-sized enterprises, account for more than 58% of the total gross added value in the EU. So essentially, the drivers of the economy, but there's more that can be done, particularly within the framework of European projects. And if we look at FP7, there was 85,000 participants, and only 17% of these total participants were actually from SMEs. So there's improvement to be made there, and the way that improvements to be made is ideally to come up with new mechanisms through which SMEs can comfortably engage in these sorts of programs. And across the societal challenges, these the projects will be more SME friendly, but the SME instrument is really to kind of, as it says, put the SME at the heart of the projects. So 64% of participants were universities and research institutes, and that makes a lot of sense because that's where the blue sky research is being done. It's where a lot of the technical expertise in the science is being done, and these organisations are fantastic partners for SMEs, and the SMEs can learn a lot from working with them. However, the consultation that was undertaken with SMEs found that there was a general feeling that while participating in academic-led projects, most of them were done to further academic research as opposed to commercialise the knowledge that's been developed. So results were being generated but not exploited, and that was the main challenge that the SMEs were facing. So the problem was at commercialisation stage rather than the research stage. And around about a third of businesses consulted said that they felt that the projects in which they participated, while great in terms of networking and so on, weren't necessarily directly aligned to the company's strategy. So I could have just said that bottom bit really first, but research without commercialization couldn't necessarily always be considered a true innovation. So the SME instrument is to be introduced. It's new in the sense that there's a kind of three-phase approach, which I'll kind of take you through briefly. But it's all about sort of filling the gaps in early stage funding, really high risk research and innovation, and to stimulate and get innovation to the market. Now, there's a number of redeeming features with this. Luca mentioned 70% is going to be the kind of funding rate, but kind of point three there is the biggie. So for the first time, there's an ability to fund single company projects. Now, this doesn't mean that a company can necessarily apply to the call and receive a funding project if it was looking at something that wasn't necessarily going to demonstrate European added value or have an impact wider than their domestic or national market. So it's about single company projects, yes, but it's about the scale and level of innovation and development. So does it have a European added value? Is there a European dimension to it? And because of that, collaboration is encouraged, but comes down to the bottom there. The SME is in the driving seat of who they collaborate with. And this can be via subcontract, it can be via one partner, it can be via none if they can demonstrate it. So basically what I'm getting at here is many of the societal challenges and many of the other projects we'll be looking at, say a minimum of 3 organizations from 3 different countries, potentially a 5 or 6 consortium project. The SME instrument is looking at projects which are extremely close to market and maybe only involving 1, 2, or 3 partners. So less clunky as well. The other particularly redeeming feature is that projects will be bottom up. So what we mean is through the societal challenges and through a lot of the activities, the specifics of the calls, as you remember, say some of the FP7 calls were really about the Commission would set a priority, and in order to be successful in that, you would have to essentially fit what the prescriptive nature of that was. In this sense, as long as a project idea largely fits one of the societal challenges, which is looking to be tackled, the actual generation of that idea, what the project will do, is driven by the SME. So it's the SME's project idea and not sort of prescriptive from the top. So basically, the 3 key things that the SME instrument will allow organizations to do, SMEs to do, is decide what the project's going to be about, how it's going to be organized, and who they want to collaborate with. So I really couldn't go any further without showing you this wonderful flowchart, which I didn't design this. This was designed by someone else. I'm disappointed to say. But there's 3 main phases to the SME instrument. As you can see here, feasibility, market replication, and commercialization. Going through it briefly, the feasibility stage is pretty much what you would think. It's about exploring, is a pilot project possible? Is IP likely to come out of this project? And is the IP capable of being commercialized, really? In here, projects are probably about 6 to 12 months long and will be around about 50 to 60K in value. 50% of project costs would be received up front. One of the redeeming features of this is that application is said to be quite light, in that it's only going to be looking for 10 pages for feasibility. The caveat attached to that, of course, is that everyone in Europe is going to be applying for this, so it's going to be extremely competitive. It's brand new, extremely competitive. So 10 pages, yes, but they have to be a very, very good 10 pages. The second stage is the kind of main grant funding stage, really, which is looking at demonstration, prototyping, design work, and market replication activity. So projects are probably about 1 to 2 years here, 70% support, and that's going to be phased grant support. And yeah, around about 1 to 3 million euros, but that's flexible depending on the project. One thing that's interesting here, and obviously with many academic individuals and organizations in here, and it's something that Richard and I talked about, was the ability for SMEs to outsource activity here. So actually the SME gets to decide if they want to so they can actually outsource activity to an academic or to another SME, which can really add value to what they're trying to do. But the bonus of that is actually that all IP that's generated from within the project resides with the SME. So it's very much putting the support behind the SME and what the SME is looking to do in the project. And the final stage is something that's very new, actually, and it's a novel idea, in that we mentioned before the main challenge that was felt was the commercialization. Well, the idea behind phase 3 is not to put further cash into an SME, but actually to provide indirect support. And that's by collectively using additional support networks and support mechanisms within a region. So within Scotland, it would be the likes of the high growth unit within Scottish Enterprise, Innovation Specialists, Enterprise Europe Network, same up in HIE, and use that smartly around a project to be able to accelerate the commercialisation. So the reason that this is the case and actually cash isn't available is because there's the feeling that by the time you get to this stage, kind of the hard work will have been done. Feasibility is being tested. The value and marketability of the project and the proposal is such that it would be able to attract private sector investment. Now, that's not necessarily always possibly going to be the case, and that refers back to what Luca mentioned before about the new financial instruments. Because should there be a shortfall in private sector investment that would allow a company to commercialise what they're trying to do, then there's debt and equity facilities that can be pulled in there as well. But that's the kind of phase 3 phase. So this is a kind of coaching and mentoring really at the end here, which is kind of new and is still, how that's specifically going to look is still being developed. But an SME from feasibility right through to commercialisation would receive really hands-on support to be able to ensure that some of the failings that existed in previous projects wouldn't necessarily be the case here. This is kind of just another way of looking at it really, but logically it's 3 phases. So success at phase 1 naturally leads on to 2, naturally leads on to 3, but you would have to submit a new application each time. The reason for that is that it's essentially a significantly new piece of work. The jump up in cash from 50k to potentially 2 million is significant, and it's a different piece of an area of activity. That said, if a company feels that through other means it's undertaken quite a lot of the work that you would normally do in the feasibility, it can come in at phase 2. So a company can go direct into a phase 2 application if they've already undertaken themselves or through other means some of the concept and feasibility assessment. This, again, allows an area of flexibility for a company, and they're not necessarily being channeled right through, although it is encouraged to go through the process, but it is flexible enough to factor that in. The calls are open from the start of the year, and in theory, they're actually open all the time because they're assessed in batches rather than it being a 6-month call. So they're assessed sort of quarterly. So there should be an assessment in March, in June, in September, and then in December again. So what this means again is that there's a flexibility as to when a company can possibly submit. That said, you can only submit 1 application a year. So if a company submitted into phase, you can submit multiple into phase 1, into phase 2. And if there's already an existing project that's already in phase 2, you can't come in and submit another one in phase 1. But that's the only thing. So one project a year, really. The coaching and mentoring stuff that I talked about in terms of the commercialization support, as I said, it's been the specifics of how this is going to look is still being completely finalised within host organisations. Myself and bosses and colleagues within Scottish Enterprise, and there's some innovation specialists here today, are talking about how that would be delivered practically. But generally speaking, as I said, it would be delivered by existing support networks, Enterprise Europe Network, national contact points, smartly using public sector support to be able to wrap around a company's plans for commercialising what they've developed in their innovation. So myself and my colleagues at the EEN will be your kind of main initial contact point for SME instrument inquiries, but rest assured that we would smartly use existing networks. So that's kind of where that's come from. So basically, it's all types of SMEs looking to grow, develop and internationalise. Single company support is there for the first time, but there has to be EU added value, there has to be an EU dimension, so collaboration is encouraged. 70% funding grant-based and bottom-up approach, so it's about the company's priorities and what the company wants to do, and not quite as prescriptive, as long as it tackles one of H2020 societal challenges, which is essentially underlining all activity within each training activity. So that's kind of it from me. A brief sort of overview of the SME instrument. It's myself and my colleague Lucy's contact details up on the screen there. I have a meeting this afternoon, but I will leave some business cards if I don't get a chance to speak to people out at the registration table. Please feel free to get in touch, and likewise speak to Lucy about anything that you might feel would be of relevance. Thank you.